announcements?
No, not the one about the
The one
last one. The one.
The one that's collecting Gauss's law.
Yeah.
Yeah. They go to the bathroom reading.
Yeah. Exactly. My first tendency is always just to throw some idea out as it comes into my head and just explore it. But it's never a good idea to do that and think out loud when I'm not feeling well. So, and that's usually the sign that I'm not feeling well, is that I start short-circuiting a little bit, and it's like, why do I feel so tired? Because I usually don't get real sick. And then all of a sudden, why do I feel like that? Oh, and then the nose starts getting a little stuffy, and fortunately, it's like the secondary symptom for me, not the initial onset. So anyway, I apologize, but it's kind of hopefully an interesting parallel of electrical charge properties and gravitational mass properties. And if nothing else, you can kind of hopefully get a sense of the underlying motivation for why all of these string theorists and physicists are trying to find this grand theory of how everything fits together, because there are so many parallels between gravitation and electromagnetism, yet for some reason we can describe gravitation in terms of space. We define electromagnetism in terms of charge and field that does not require bending or warping of space. Yet because of their similarities, the natural inclination is to say, well, they must somehow be able to be tied together in the same sort of fashion without necessarily the reality of our physical universe either being integral to one and not the other, or by necessity it being integral to both. And figuring out, because it's a symmetry thing, right? If you can do this, why can't you do this? You should be able to do this, especially if they look so parallel. Why the hell is it so difficult to mesh them? And that's been the struggle the last at least 40 years. Trying to figure out why they don't and how can you make them. And if you can make them mesh, which they figured out ways to sort of do that, how come the magnitudes are so different, and why the need to throw in, how come space alone is not enough to describe all of this, the three dimensions themselves, not enough information to describe how these things fit together? Well, when in doubt, then start throwing extra dimensions in. If you get 12 or 150, eventually it all works, and oh, look, see? So there's a lot of weird little motivations here that are kind of interesting. Then you start watching Nova or Brian Greene vids again, you kind of see how this stuff fits in. Because there's a motivation. It's not just cuz, which, unto itself, it's spiritual, right? How does it all fit together? What does it all mean? What's the nature of our own existence and why? But at a very basic level, purely scientifically, there's a fascination with the detachment, yet apparent ostensive similarity between these ideas. So that was essentially what I was trying to get across, but I took sort of a strange tack that would have resolved itself had I wanted to do a whole bunch of other things, so I tried to clarify it in a much more simple way. If nothing else, Gauss's law as a basic premise works for mass as well, and gravitation. Okay, so, but we are back to just applications of Gauss's law and just some things, ways that these things manifest. And I think what I'd like to do, I can just continue to go through just not derivations maybe, but applications. But what I'd like you to do is turn on the computers, and there's a simulation software. I've used it before. It's at a website called phet.colorado.edu. And the particular simulation, assuming we can work adequately. Basically allows you to take an empty space and start adding electrical charges to it and observing how the electric fields, what they look like and how they change and add when you start adding charges in different ways. And as we apply Gauss's law, because the big advantage is when you apply it to broader surfaces that you can't just immediately reduce to point charges or that are too difficult to try to solve using Coulomb's law, or at least much easier to solve by making symmetry arguments using Gauss's law. We kind of get a sense for what they look like. And then as we maybe step back and now apply Gauss's law, we can sort of see why we can make certain arguments as we do the application. So, turn the volume set to just about max. Maybe they were listening to Def Leppard during the last live session.
No, that's not.
The last Def Leppard concert I went to was about 4 years ago, and I always forget the lead singer's name. But if you ever wanted to know, if you ever wanted to see a controlled study of human growth hormone versus no human growth hormone and how it affects physiology over the years, these cats are like 60 years old, right? I mean, they were in their 20s in the 80s, right? Their heyday, 1983. So that's like 30 years ago. But, you know, they're like in their 40s, possibly pushing 50. Or in their 50s, possibly pushing into the 60s. And the lead guitarist is more ripped than 99.9% of any 20-year-old I've ever seen. The guy is cut with abs and just, I mean, you can see every single muscle just all over the place. The lead singer, not only can he not hit his original high notes, because he's getting old, but he's got the big old gut, and he's like sweating, and he's just barely, you know, he's more at home sitting on the stool playing rhythm guitar for a couple of ballads than he is actually rocking out. But pretty much everybody behind him, including the one-armed drummer, is just going nuts.